Hey, this is Luke from Steve White Motors with the million-dollar question. Ever since the Hellcat has come out, people have asked us about putting a Hellcat engine in a non-Hellcat car. Well, let me give you some basics of why this works and why it does not work. So, for example, I've got a brand new 1320. It's a V8, it's a 6.4. It's actually fairly easy. It's dimensionally the same to make the Hellcat engine. So I can show you one. So, for example, here's a takeout Hellcat motor we have sitting right here. So the problems with putting that into this, and I've got a Hellcat sitting over there, and I'll talk about that in a second. Let me address the V6 scenario first. Dimensionally, the 5.7 and 6.4 are exactly the same as the 6.2 Hellcat motor. Dimensionally, they're the same. It fits without any issues. It's like two small block Chevys. They're identical in physical size. On a V8, it's pretty easy to a point to make this work. Now, on a V6 is where it gets really tricky. The problem with the V6 is that you're missing 1/4 of the wiring harness that you need. So you need 2 additional cylinders, so you need 2 additional coil takeoff connections, harnesses, and you need the fuel injectors as well. So you're missing 1/4 of the harness that you need, which is it's very difficult to try to retrofit. If you've got a V6, I'm going to tell you my opinion right now, if you want to put a Hellcat motor into a V6 car, go trade the car. The simplest thing you can do is trade the car. Even if you make the engine work and you put all the money in transferring it from one to the other, the first time you get on the throttle hard, you're going to lose the transmission or you're going to lose the differential. So right away you're another $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 into it. It makes no sense when, for example, I just pulled this used Hellcat from the assembly, from the front row. Very, very nice. It's a $47,000 car. It's a 6-speed. It's got 6,000 miles. Never been abused. Great used Hellcat for $48,000 or less. If you've got a V6, this is the way to go. Now, the things that make this complicated. If you can focus on this, I don't know if you can get it. The way that we control the supercharger is with an electronic bypass. So underneath here, and it's really hard to tell, you have a throttle body. And that little throttle body is the bypass. It's electronically controlled. So the problem with putting one of these motors into a non-Hellcat car in the past was this. Now we've got a solution through 8-speed. They're doing it to my car right now. We've got the ability to set up an electronic bypass. It's about $500 for the bypass. By the time you do the tuning and install it, you've got about another $800 or $900. Not a bad scenario. The problems that you're going to have, well, it's going to have a cooling system. That car doesn't have a cooling system. This car has a cooling system. It's got a heat exchanger mounted, or charge cooler, whatever you want to call it, heat exchanger mounted on the bottom of the front fascia. So the problems you're faced, let's go back to this 1320. So the problems you're faced with is a couple things. First of all, you've got to make the electronic bypass work. The second problem is you've got to hook up a cooling system. So you've got to have a heat exchanger, you've got to have tubing, hoses, you've got to have a pump of some sort to pump the coolant, and the heat exchanger needs to be of a sufficient size to make all this work. The next problem is you need a better fuel system. The harness is very simple because on a V8 from 11 to 18 or 19, the harness is really the same. The other problem you're going to run into is that the Hellcat has 4 map sensors where a regular car only has 1. So you've got to eliminate 3, but you can tune that. Again, tuning can be done. So putting a Hellcat into this car is not that complicated. There are some costs involved. Typical Hellcat motor, new one's going to cost you about $16K. By the time you've got a cooling system of some sort, a pump, a heat exchanger, plumbing, reservoir, all the additional parts that you need, you're going to have about $2,000 additional. Then you've got to have an electronic bypass. Electronic bypass will set you back about $500. By the time you tune it, wire it up, get it all done, you're going to have about $1,500 into it. The next problem is we can use the Hellcat fuel pump and transfer a Hellcat fuel pump to this vehicle to make it work. All pretty simple. The catch is, by the time you've done all that, and if you can't do the labor yourself, you're somewhere around $23,000, $24,000. That's assuming you haven't put any headers on it, you haven't done any other modifications, and you still have a scat pack or an RT. The scat pack, the transmission, the new 8 speeds will take a lot of punishment. Even on the 5.7 version, the 8 speed will take a lot of punishment. As long as you've got a 230 mil rear axle, as long as you don't put drag radials on it or drag slicks on it, the differential will take a lot of punishment. As a recap, this is not that complicated. It can be done. It's a matter of money. The problem is this. It's a scat pack. It's probably $40,000. By the time you do the conversion, you've got every bit of $20,000 plus in the conversion. Is it worth it? Yeah, some people it's worth it. Or is it easier to pick up a used Hellcat like this one over here for $48,000? At the end of the day, you're probably much further ahead to do that. To go ahead and not because I don't want to sell you a motor. I'd love to sell you an engine. We'd love to do the conversion for you. But at the end of the day, is it cost effective? Probably isn't. Now, some people will do it. I did it. Big Red's got a full-blown Hellcat 426 stroker with a 2650, but I'm racing that car. It's a totally different animal. Again, can it be done? Yes. Is it cost effective? Probably not. And I'll touch again on the V6. If you've got a V6, the only thing you can really do is trade the car. If by the time you do a transmission, a differential, by the time you do the modifications on the harness, my God, you'll have every bit of $35,000 to $40,000 in the car. It doesn't make sense when you can buy a used Hellcat, let's say for this, like this one for example, that's got 6,000 miles on it for $47,900. Just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, this is the $1 million question. Ever since the Hellcat has come out, we've been asked over and over and over again, what's it going to take to put a Hellcat motor in my Scat Pack or in my 5.7? You got a car that's paid for? Might not be a bad idea, especially if you can do a lot of work yourself. Again, the harnesses are very similar. As long as you've got a V8, it basically bolts up. Yes, you've got to make some modifications for the map sensors. You've got to have an electronic bypass to control the secondary throttle body. But as a whole, it's doable. Almost impossible to do with a V6. And if you're trying to do that, like I said, trade the car. Anyway, this is Luke from Steve White Motors. Thank you.